After my son left for his job in another city, my daughter-in-law told me, "If you want food and medicine, you will beg." Every morning she dropped me at the railway station to beg, went to parties herself, and took every dollar I collected every night. Hello, my dear listeners. Before I begin my story, I would be very happy if you subscribe and hit the like button. Please write in the comments which city or country you are listening from. Now enjoy the story. I used to believe that pain announces itself, that it arrives loudly, that it knocks before entering. But the pain that changed my life came quietly, wrapped in routine, disguised as family. My name is Grace Carter, and before everything fell apart, I lived a life that felt simple and earned. For most of my years, I lived for one purpose: my son. Daniel Carter was my only child. After his father passed away, it was just the two of us. I worked slowly as my body allowed. I saved carefully. I learned how to stretch food, time, and strength. I never felt rich, but I felt secure. And security to a mother feels like peace. When Daniel grew up, found a good job, and stood on his own feet, I felt proud. When he told me he wanted to get married, I felt relieved. I believed marriage would add support to his life and kindness to mine. That belief lived quietly in my heart. After the wedding, the three of us lived in the same house. My house, the walls already knew my footsteps. The windows already knew my mornings. Daniel worked in Chicago, far from us. He was a labor supervisor at a food company. Long hours, hard work. After the marriage, he stayed home for a short time before returning to his job. Those weeks felt hopeful. We ate together. We talked. We planned nothing. And that felt enough. The night before Daniel left, he sat near me. His voice was tired but gentle. "Mom," he said, "I wish I didn't have to go." I nodded. "I'll be fine," I told him. Before leaving, he gave his wife Melissa an envelope. Inside was $10,000. "This is for Mom," he said clearly. "Her food, her medicines, everything she needs. She's physically weak." Melissa nodded. She smiled. I thought that smile meant care. I was wrong. The day Daniel left, the house changed. Not in sound. In feeling. Melissa stopped speaking kindly. Stopped asking. Stopped pretending. The next morning, she stood in front of me with her arms crossed. "You need to understand something, Grace," she said. I looked at her. "Daniel isn't here anymore." Her voice was cold. "You don't bring any value now." The words landed heavy. I tried to speak. She didn't wait. "If you want food," she said. "If you want medicine, you'll work." I didn't understand. "Work?" I asked. She pointed toward the door. "You'll beg." My chest tightened. "I can't," I whispered. She leaned closer. "If you tell Daniel," she said quietly, "I'll send you to an old home." She paused. "You'll disappear there." I had seen those places. I knew what that meant. That night I didn't sleep. Fear kept my body still and my mouth closed. The next morning, she drove me to the railway station. She didn't explain. She didn't look at me. She opened the door and said, "Be quick." Then she left. I stood there confused and exposed. People passed. Someone placed coins in my hand. I didn't lift my head. That was the beginning. From that day on, silence became my shield. I didn't argue. I didn't question. I obeyed. Fear told me it was safer that way. And fear was louder than dignity. Silence did not arrive suddenly. It settled into my life slowly, the way dust gathers in corners when no one is looking. After that first day at the railway station, there was no discussion. No explanation, no apology. The next morning, Melissa shook the car keys again. That sound became my alarm. "Get up," she said, already irritated. "You're late." I did not ask where we were going. I already knew. The railway station greeted me every morning the same way. Cold air, rushed footsteps, people moving with purpose, and me, standing still. At first, my body resisted. My legs hurt from standing too long. My hands shook when I held out the cloth bag. My head stayed low because meeting people's eyes felt unbearable. Some people stopped. Some placed coins gently in my palm, like they were afraid I might break. Others avoided me completely, as if looking at me would slow their lives down. Every sound felt sharp. Announcements echoed through the station. Trains arrived and left. Life moved forward for everyone else. I stayed behind. By the third week, the routine was fixed. Melissa dropped me off at the same spot every morning. "Don't wander," she warned. "Stay where people can see you." Then she drove away. I knew where she went. She told me without shame. "I have brunch. I have a party. I have friends waiting." She said these things while I stood there with an empty stomach and a weak body. The contrast hurt more than hunger. Some mornings I tried to stand straight. I reminded myself of who I used to be. A mother. A woman who paid her bills. A woman who kept her home clean. But dignity is hard to hold when your survival depends on strangers. Slowly, my shoulders curved forward. My voice disappeared. I learned to stay quiet. In the evenings, Melissa returned. She never asked how my day went. She opened her hand. "Give it," she said. I placed every coin, every bill into her palm. She counted carefully. If she felt it wasn't enough, her face darkened. "You're not trying," she said once. "People give more when you look helpless." That night I cried silently in my bed. Not because of the words, but because part of me believed her. Her anger grew sharper with time. If I walked too slowly, she scolded me. If I looked tired, she mocked me. "Stand properly," she snapped one morning. No one gives money to someone who looks lazy. Lazy. I had never been called that in my life. At night, Daniel called. His voice came through the phone, warm and familiar. "Mom?" he said. "Are you okay?" Before I could answer, Melissa stepped in. "She's sleeping," she said softly. She was tired today. I lay awake in the next room, staring at the ceiling. Every word she spoke on my behalf felt like another wall closing in. I wanted to scream. I didn't. Fear sat on my chest like weight. Some days my body almost gave up. My knees locked while standing. My head spun. My hands went numb. Once a woman at the station offered me water. I drank slowly, ashamed of how grateful I felt. She touched my arm gently and said, "Take care of yourself." I nodded, unable to speak. Melissa noticed my weakness. Instead of concern, it irritated her. "You're embarrassing me," she said one evening. "If you collapse, people will talk." Talk. That word terrified her. Not my suffering. Not my health. Only what others might say. Her parties became louder. I heard laughter late at night when I returned exhausted. Music echoed through the house. Sometimes I smelled food cooking. Food I would never taste. She didn't hide her life. She displayed it. And I disappeared quietly into a corner of the same house that once belonged to me. There were moments when my silence felt heavier than pain. When I sat alone at the station, watching families pass by, something inside me cracked. I wondered how long a person could be invisible before they stopped feeling real. But still, I did not speak. Not to neighbors. Not to strangers. Not to my son. Fear reminded me of the old home she threatened me with. Fear reminded me that silence felt safer than being lost forever. One evening, as Melissa collected the money, she looked at me with irritation. "You're slowing me down," she said. "Hurry next time." I nodded. I always nodded. That night, Daniel called again. "Mom," he said, "you sound tired lately." My throat tightened. Before I could answer, Melissa laughed lightly. "She worries too much," she said. "I take very good care of her." I closed my eyes. Inside me, something bent. Not enough to break yet, but enough to hurt. I lay in bed listening to the house settle, listening to my own breathing, wondering how long a person could live like this and still recognize themselves. I had no plan, no courage, only endurance. And endurance, I learned, can look a lot like silence. There is a point where pain stops being loud. It becomes quiet, heavy. It settles into your bones and refuses to leave. After months at the railway station, my body no longer protested the way it used to. It simply gave less every day. I woke up tired. I stood tired. I came back tired. And still, every morning, the keys shook. Some days, my knees locked so badly that I had to lean against a pillar just to stay upright. I learned which walls were cold and which ones were warm. I learned where the sunlight fell at certain hours. And I stood there longer because warmth helped my joints move. My hands changed. They no longer shook from shame alone. They shook from weakness. When I held out the cloth bag, it felt heavier than it should have. Melissa noticed. Not with concern, with irritation. "You're getting slower," she said one morning as I struggled to step out of the car. "Don't embarrass me today." I nodded. That was my answer to everything. At the station, people began to recognize me. Not my name. My presence. There was a man who passed every morning with the same newspaper under his arm. A woman who walked fast in a gray coat. A young worker who always avoided my eyes but left coins anyway. One morning, an older woman stopped in front of me. She didn't drop money right away. She looked at my face. "You okay?" she asked quietly. The question startled me. I hadn't heard those words in months. "I'm fine," I said automatically. She didn't argue. She placed a bill in my hand and said, "Take care of yourself." Her kindness hurt more than cruelty, because it reminded me of who I used to be. My body began to fail me in small, frightening ways. Sometimes my vision blurred. Sometimes sounds faded. Sometimes my heart raced for no reason. Once, I sat down on the cold floor because my legs refused to hold me. People walked around me. Someone offered water. Someone called out, asking if I needed help. Fear forced me back to my feet. I could not afford attention. Attention led to questions. Questions led to consequences. That evening, Melissa was angry. "You sat down?" she snapped after counting the money. "Do you want problems?" I lowered my eyes. "No," I whispered. She leaned closer. "You're lucky I let you stay here," she said. "Don't forget that." I didn't answer. I went to my room and closed the door softly, as if sound itself might anger her. That night my chest hurt. Not sharply. Dully. I lay awake, listening to my heartbeat, wondering if this was how people disappeared. Slowly. Quietly, without anyone noticing. I thought of Daniel. I thought of his voice on the phone. I wondered if he would recognize me if he saw me now. The next morning, something different happened. At the station, as I stood near my usual spot, a familiar face approached me. It was Nora. She lived 2 streets away from my house. We were not close friends, but we had shared polite greetings for years. She stopped short when she saw me. "Grace?" she asked. I froze. Hearing my name felt dangerous. "Yes," I said carefully. Her eyes moved over me, my clothes, my posture, my face. "What are you doing here?" she asked gently. I looked away. "Just passing time," I said. The lie tasted bitter. Nora didn't push. She placed money in my hand like everyone else. But she didn't leave. She stood beside me. "You don't look well," she said quietly. "I'm fine," I repeated. She sighed. "If you ever need anything," she said, "I'm around." Then she walked away. That moment stayed with me all day. Not because of what she said, because of what she didn't. She didn't accuse. She didn't judge. She didn't demand answers. She simply noticed me. Melissa was late picking me up that evening. I stood longer than usual. My back screamed in pain. When she finally arrived, she was annoyed. "Why do you look like that?" she asked. People stare. I said nothing. On the drive home, she talked about a party she was going to later. New people, loud music, fun. I stared out the window. 2 lives moving in opposite directions. At night, Daniel called again. "Mom," he said, "are you eating properly?" I hesitated. Just for a second. Melissa's eyes flicked toward me. "She eats fine," Melissa said quickly. "I give her medicine on time." Daniel laughed lightly. "I knew I could trust you," he said. Trust. That word pressed against my chest. After the call ended, I sat alone in my room. I felt something inside me reach a limit. Not explode. Not break. Just stop bending. The next day at the station, Nora came again. She didn't ask questions. She stood near me, pretending to wait for someone. After a while, she spoke softly. "You don't have to answer," she said. "But I worry." I swallowed. "I'm tired," I said. That was all. But it was the first true thing I had said in months. Nora nodded. "If you ever want to talk," she said, "I listen well." That evening, as Melissa collected the money, she scolded me again. "You're useless when you look sick," she said. "Fix your face." Something inside me tightened. I said nothing. Silence was still my shield. But now, silence felt heavier than fear. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about Nora's eyes. Not curious. Concerned. I thought about my body, how little it had left to give. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what to do. But for the first time, I knew I could not continue like this forever. And knowing that changed something. Quietly. The idea did not come to me like courage. It came like exhaustion. The kind that sits in your chest and whispers, "You cannot do this much longer." After that night, after I admitted, even quietly, that I was tired, my thoughts began to change their shape. Not direction, just shape. I still woke up to the sound of keys. I still rode in silence. I still stood at the same place in the railway station. But something inside me started counting. I began noticing details I had ignored before. The way Melissa's voice rose when she was in a hurry. The way her face tightened when she was late for a party. The way she spoke louder in the car, as if sound itself gave her power. "Stand there," she said one morning. "Not there. People don't stop there." I obeyed. But my mind stayed awake. At the station, my body struggled more each day. I leaned against walls longer. I sat down when no one watched. I saved my strength like coins, one small piece at a time. Nora appeared often now. Sometimes she stood nearby. Sometimes she passed slowly. Sometimes she said nothing at all. Her presence felt steady. One morning, as Melissa drove away, Nora walked up beside me. "You look thinner," she said softly. I didn't answer. She sighed. "Grace," she said, "I don't need details. But I need to know one thing." I looked at her. "Are you safe?" The word safe echoed in my head. I thought of the house. The threats. The fear. "I don't know," I said. That was the truth. That evening, Melissa was angrier than usual. She had dressed carefully. Her hair was perfect. Her shoes clicked sharply on the floor. "You're slow," she snapped. "Because of you, I'm late." I apologized. The word fell out of my mouth before I could stop it. She smirked. "Good," she said. "At least you know your place." That night, my chest hurt again. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for it to pass. I thought about what would happen if my body gave up at the station. Would Melissa come for me? Or would she pretend she didn't know me? That thought scared me more than anything else. The next day, something small happened. But small things can change everything. Melissa was rushing me out of the house. "Hurry," she said. "I don't have time for you today." As she turned away, her phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. She cursed under her breath and bent down to pick it up. The screen lit up. For just a second, I saw my own reflection in it. Bent, small, quiet, and I wondered, what if someone else could see what I see? The thought frightened me. I pushed it away. At the station, Nora stood closer than usual. She handed me a bottle of water. "You didn't drink yesterday," she said. I took it with shaking hands. "Thank you." She hesitated. "I have a phone," she said carefully. "If you ever need to call someone." My heart started racing. "I don't need," I began. She raised her hand gently. "I know," she said. "I'm just saying." She walked away. But her words stayed. That evening, Melissa insulted me again. "You look awful," she said. "Try harder tomorrow." Something inside me finally whispered back. "Try what? Try to disappear faster?" That night I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling and imagined different endings. None of them were good. But one question kept returning. What if silence is not protecting me anymore? The idea came slowly, dangerously, not as a plan, as a possibility. If someone heard her words, if someone saw how she treated me, the thought made my stomach twist. Fear answered immediately. "She will send you away. She will make you vanish." I turned on my side and closed my eyes. Fear still had a strong voice. But now it was not alone. The next morning, Melissa shouted while we were still inside the house. "Move faster," she said. "I'm late." Her voice echoed in the hallway. I felt myself shrink. Then I thought of Nora's question. "Are you safe?" Something inside me whispered, "This is not safety." At the station, Nora stood near me again. She didn't speak at first. Then very quietly she said, I heard shouting earlier. From the street. My heart stopped. You did? I asked. She nodded slowly. I didn't understand the words, she said. But I recognized the tone. I swallowed. I'm sorry, I whispered. She looked confused. Sorry for what? For everything. She studied my face. Then she said something that scared me more than Melissa ever had. You don't deserve this. That sentence followed me all day. I repeated it in my head like a fragile thing. You don't deserve this. At home, Melissa yelled again. I listened differently now. Not as a victim, as a witness. That night, I made a decision that did not feel brave. It felt desperate. The next morning, before leaving the house, I whispered to Nora when Melissa wasn't listening. If someone needed to hear how she talks to me. My voice shook. Nora's eyes widened. You mean? I nodded quickly. But I'm scared, I said. I don't know if I can. She didn't push. She said one sentence. We can stop any time. That sentence mattered. The following morning, Melissa was in a rush again. She scolded me in the car. You're useless, she said. Always slowing me down. I felt my hands tremble. At the station, Nora stood nearby. Her phone was in her hand. Not raised. Just ready. My heart pounded so loudly I thought people could hear it. Melissa leaned out of the car. Stand there, she snapped. And don't sit down today. Her words cut through me. I looked at Nora. Just once. She met my eyes. I nodded slightly. She pressed a button. That was it. No speech. No confrontation. Just sound. Just truth. Melissa drove away. I stood there shaking. Fear washed over me. What had I done? I wanted to run. I wanted to undo it. Nora slipped the phone back into her pocket. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just stood beside me. It's okay, she said quietly. We have time. Time. For the first time in months, that word did not feel like a threat. I stood at the station that day feeling exposed. Like my silence had cracked open. Nothing had changed yet. Melissa still controlled everything. I still begged. I still obeyed. But now, the truth had made a sound. And once something is heard, it cannot be unheard. After that morning, silence no longer felt empty. It felt dangerous. Not because Melissa knew anything had changed, but because I did. Every word she spoke now felt heavier, like it left a mark in the air. And every day Nora stood close enough to hear. The next few mornings followed the same pattern. Melissa rushed. She shouted. She insulted. And Nora listened. She never held the phone high. Never made it obvious. Never took risks I could not survive. Sometimes it was just her voice, sharp and angry. Sometimes it was her footsteps pacing around me. Sometimes it was the sound of the car door slamming while she yelled one last insult. Each time Nora pressed the button quietly. Each time my heart raced like it might tear itself free. I did not feel brave. I felt afraid. Every evening, when Melissa counted the money, I wondered if she could see something different in my eyes. But she never looked closely. She was too busy, too distracted by her own life. You're still slow, she said one night. You need to work harder. Work. I wondered how begging became work, and cruelty became power. At the railway station, my routine stayed the same. Same pillar, same corner of sunlight, same faces passing by. But inside me, everything felt fragile. I feared being noticed. I feared being ignored. Fear became my shadow. Nora and I never spoke about the recordings openly. We didn't need to. Our understanding lived in glances. If Melissa was calm, Nora stayed back. If Melissa was angry, Nora stayed closer. Some days, Melissa's anger exploded early. You're useless, she shouted once while still inside the house. I don't know why I'm stuck with you. Nora heard it from the sidewalk. Her phone caught everything. At night, when I lay in bed, fear visited me again. What if Melissa found out? What if she took my phone? What if she sent me away before anything mattered? My chest tightened. But something else lived there now, too. Proof. Days turned into weeks. The recordings piled up quietly. Nora kept them safe. She labeled dates, times, places. She was careful in a way I could not be. I trusted her. Not blindly, but deeply. Melissa's behavior grew worse. Not because of us, because she felt powerful. "You should thank me," she said one evening. "Without me, you'd be nothing." I lowered my eyes. Inside, something hardened. Her parties grew louder. Her nights grew later. Sometimes she returned home laughing loudly, smelling of food and perfume. I sat alone in my room listening. The contrast felt cruel. Daniel still called. His voice was steady. "Mom, you sound tired," he said one night. I hesitated. "Just a breath." Melissa answered quickly. "She worries too much," she said. "I take very good care of her." The lie slid smoothly from her mouth. After the call, I sat in the dark. I wondered how many lies it takes to erase a person. One afternoon at the station, my legs failed me again. I sat down before I could stop myself. People stared. Someone offered help. Nora stepped closer. She stood between me and the questions. "I've got her," she said calmly. Her voice was firm, protective. I leaned against her for a moment, just long enough to breathe. That night, Melissa was furious. "I told you not to sit," she shouted. "You're ruining everything." I flinched. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "Remember what happens if you talk." Fear surged again. Sharp. Immediate. But this time, fear did not erase everything else. It shared space. Nora recorded that night too. Not video, just sound. Melissa's threats echoed clearly. As the days passed, I began to notice something unexpected. Melissa never asked where the money went. She never counted it twice. She never questioned her control. She believed silence meant obedience. She believed fear meant loyalty. One morning, as she dropped me off, she said something that stayed with me. "No one would believe you anyway," she said casually. "Look at you." She drove away laughing. I stood still. Her words hurt, but they also revealed something important. She believed I was invisible. At the station, Nora spoke quietly. "She thinks no one hears," she said. I nodded. "She's wrong," Nora continued. I didn't answer. I was afraid of hope. The recordings continued, week after week. Not dramatic, not explosive, just truth repeated again and again. Her anger, her insults, her threats, her control. Truth does not need decoration. My body continued to weaken. But my silence changed shape. It was no longer empty. It was full. Full of words that had been saved. Full of moments that could not be denied. One evening, as Melissa took the money, she said something careless. "You should be grateful," she said. "I could have sent you away already." She smiled. Nora's phone was in her pocket that night, too. I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling. My fear had not disappeared, but it had changed. It no longer asked, "What if she finds out?" It asked something else. What if this is enough? Nothing had been sent. Nothing had been revealed. Life looked the same from the outside. But underneath, the truth was stacking itself quietly. Waiting. There comes a time when silence stops feeling safe. It does not break. It tightens. After weeks of recordings, after days that looked the same on the outside, my body and mind began to disagree with each other. My body wanted rest. My mind refused. The mornings became heavier. Not because the routine changed, but because I was carrying more than fear now. I was carrying truth. Truth has weight. Melissa's anger sharpened. Not in new ways. In familiar ones. "You're late. You're slow. You're useless." The words came easily to her. They fell out of her mouth the way coins fell into my cloth bag. Careless, practiced, without thought. And every time Nora stood close enough. Every time the sound was captured. I began to dread the sound of the car door opening. It meant another day had started. Another day of standing still while life rushed past me. At the station, I noticed the change in myself. I was less afraid of people's eyes, more afraid of my own thoughts. Some days, my chest tightened so badly that I had to focus on breathing. In, out, slow. I pressed my hand against my heart and waited. I told myself not to fall. Falling would bring attention. Attention would bring questions. Questions would bring consequences. Melissa's parties grew more frequent. Her nights grew louder. She came home smiling, smelling of food and laughter, while I sat in the dark waiting for my body to settle. "You should be thankful," she said one night while counting the money. "At least you're useful for something." Useful. That word cut deeper than useless ever had. At the station, people began to greet me. Small nods. Quiet glances. A woman once said, "I see you here every day." I nodded. I did not explain. Explaining felt dangerous. Nora and I spoke in pieces. Short sentences. Careful timing. Once, while Melissa was late picking me up, Nora sat beside me on the bench. "You're shaking," she said. "I'm cold," I replied. She knew it wasn't true. She wrapped her scarf around my shoulders anyway. That simple act nearly broke me. My body began to betray me in new ways. My hands cramped. My vision blurred more often. Some mornings I struggled to swallow my medicine because my throat felt tight. Melissa noticed my weakness and used it. "You look terrible," she said. "Don't embarrass me today." I lowered my eyes. Inside, something screamed. Daniel called again one night. "Mom," he said gently, "I'm thinking of visiting soon." The word sent a shock through me. Hope and fear collided. Before I could respond, Melissa laughed. "She worries too much," she said. "She's fine. You know how she is." I sat very still. After the call ended, I went to my room and closed the door. My hands shook for a long time. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of pain, because of pressure. The recordings existed. The proof was real. But so was the risk. What if Melissa found out before it mattered? What if she sent me away suddenly? What if everything ended before the truth could stand on its own? The next morning, Melissa was in a foul mood. She shouted in the hallway. Her voice echoed through the house. "You're ruining my life!" she yelled. Nora stood outside. The sound traveled. Her phone caught it all. At the station, Nora spoke quietly. "We have enough," she said. The word scared me. Enough meant next steps. Next steps meant danger. I shook my head. "Not yet," I whispered. She nodded. "We go at your pace." That mattered. Melissa's behavior grew careless. She insulted me in public now. Once, while dropping me off, she rolled down the window and said loudly, "Don't sit down today. You're not paid to rest." People heard. I felt my face burn. Nora recorded it. That evening, Melissa was angry again. She accused me of not collecting enough money. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped low. "You think anyone cares about you?" she asked. "You have nothing." The words echoed in my head long after she left the room. I began to realize something frightening. I was not just surviving. I was disappearing. And disappearing quietly was no longer acceptable. At the station one afternoon, my legs finally gave way completely. I sat down hard. Pain shot through me. People stared. Someone asked if I needed help. Nora stepped forward again. "I'm here," she said firmly. Melissa was not there to control the moment. For the first time, someone else was. That night, Melissa was furious. "I told you not to sit," she screamed. "You're making me look bad." Her anger filled the house. I listened. Not as a victim, as someone measuring risk. I lay awake later, staring at the ceiling. My body hurt. My heart felt heavy. I thought about Daniel's voice. I thought about the recordings. I thought about how much longer I could endure this. Silence was no longer neutral. It was hurting me. The next day, Nora said something that stayed with me. "You don't owe silence your life," she said quietly. I didn't answer, but the words stayed. Melissa continued as if nothing could touch her. She joked. She planned. She lived. And every day she left more proof behind. Careless, confident, cruel. That night, as she took the money, she said something that chilled me. "If you ever cause trouble," she said calmly, "I'll make sure no one ever hears from you again." Nora's phone was recording. I felt cold. Not with fear, with clarity. I sat in my room afterward, hands folded, breathing slow. The evidence was complete. The truth was solid. What I lacked now was not proof. It was timing. And timing, I knew, could decide everything. There is a moment when fear stops asking questions. It simply waits. After that night, after Melissa's threat was captured so clearly, I carried the weight of knowing that silence was no longer protecting me. It was delaying something that had already decided to happen. But deciding when is harder than deciding what. The mornings did not change. The keys still shook. The car still smelled of impatience. Melissa still spoke like time belonged to her. But I listened differently now. I counted the spaces between her words. "You're slow," she said one morning. "You're embarrassing." I nodded. Inside, I measured risk. At the station, my routine held me upright. Same pillar, same bench, same faces passing by. But the weight in my chest grew heavier. I found myself watching phones in people's hands. How easily they pressed buttons. How quickly messages moved. I thought of Daniel. I thought of his voice. I thought of the last time he said, "I trust you." Trust. It frightened me more than fear ever had. Nora stayed close. She did not push. She did not ask. She watched me. That was enough. One afternoon, while we stood near the edge of the platform, she spoke softly. "You don't have to do anything today," she said. "Or tomorrow." I nodded. I know. But knowing did not quiet the noise inside me. Melissa's behavior became sharper, more careless. She insulted me in public now without lowering her voice. "Stand properly," she said loudly one morning. "You look pathetic." People heard. Some slowed. Some stared. Nora recorded. I felt exposed. Not because of the recording. Because of the truth. That evening, Daniel called again. "Mom," he said, "I might come home next month." The words made my hands shake. I imagined him walking into the house. Seeing me as I was, I imagined Melissa smiling. Lying. Before I could speak, Melissa laughed. "She's fine," she said. "She worries too much. You know how she is." Daniel chuckled. "Yeah," he said. "She's always been strong." Strong. I closed my eyes. After the call ended, I sat very still. Strength had become a misunderstanding. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed the recordings in my head. Her voice. Her threats. Her insults. I wondered how many times a truth needs to be repeated before it becomes undeniable. I wondered how many times a mother must stay silent before her child stops hearing her. The next morning, my body protested more than usual. My knees refused to lock. My back burned. My breath felt shallow. Melissa noticed. "You're slowing me down again," she snapped. "Don't do this today." I didn't answer. At the station, Nora helped me sit for a moment. "I'm okay," I said. She nodded. "You don't have to be," she replied. That sentence followed me. You don't have to be. For months, I believed endurance was my only option. Now endurance felt like erosion. Melissa arrived late that evening. She was angry. She accused me of not collecting enough money. She stood close. Her voice dropped low. "You think you're smarter than me?" she asked. "You think anyone would take your side?" Her confidence chilled me. Nora's phone was not out that time. But it didn't need to be. The words were already enough. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at my hands. They looked older than they felt. I thought of the house. I thought of the old home she threatened me with. I thought of how quickly she could make me disappear if she sensed danger. The fear returned. Sharp. Urgent. The next day at the station, Nora spoke again. "We can send it when you're ready," she said quietly. The word send echoed in my head. Send meant crossing a line. Send meant no return to silence. I shook my head. "Not yet," I whispered. She nodded. Days passed like this. Pressure without release. Fear without collapse. The recordings sat safe. The truth waited. And my body continued to weaken. One afternoon, as I leaned against the pillar, a man stopped and looked at me. "You here every day," he said kindly. I nodded. "You shouldn't be," he added. I didn't answer. But his words lingered. That night, Daniel didn't call. The silence felt louder than usual. I imagined him busy. Working. Trusting. I imagined him believing that I was sleeping peacefully. The thought hurt more than Melissa's insults. The next morning, Melissa was cheerful. Too cheerful. She talked about plans, trips, people. Her happiness felt careless, like she believed nothing could touch her. That confidence frightened me, because confident people make mistakes. At the station, Nora stood close again. She didn't speak. She waited. I looked at the trains arriving and leaving. I thought about movement, about choice, about how long I had been standing still. That evening, Melissa said something that tipped the balance. "If you cause trouble," she said casually, "I'll put you somewhere no one ever finds you." Her voice was calm, certain. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. This was not a threat anymore. It was a promise. I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and breathed slowly. I thought of Daniel. I thought of his hands when he was a child. I thought of the money he left, trusting someone else to care for me. Trust deserved truth, but timing mattered. I did not send anything that night, but I knew something had changed. The decision was forming. Not loud, not sudden, just steady. And once a decision begins to form, it cannot be undone. The night after Melissa's words, I did not cry. I sat quietly, still, as if my body already knew that something irreversible had begun. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled my hands. It only reminded me to be careful. The next morning felt heavier than usual. The keys shook again. Melissa spoke sharply, already irritated. "Hurry up," she said. "I don't have time for you today." I moved slowly, not because my body refused, because my mind was steady. At the railway station, everything looked the same. The same noise, the same movement, the same indifference. But I felt different standing there. I was no longer waiting. I was choosing. Nora stood nearby. She didn't speak. She watched my face carefully. Melissa leaned out of the car window before driving away. "Don't sit down," she snapped. "And don't mess this up today." Then she was gone. I exhaled slowly. Nora stepped closer. "You ready?" she asked softly. I didn't answer right away. I looked around the station. I looked at the people passing. I thought of how many mornings I had stood there pretending not to exist. I thought of Daniel, of his voice, of his trust. I nodded. We didn't rush. Nora opened her phone calmly. She showed me the recordings again. Not to convince me. To remind me. Her voice. Her threats. Her insults. Her control. There was no confusion. No misunderstanding. Just truth. I listened carefully. Not as a victim. As a mother deciding what her child needed to know. My hands shook. I steadied them on my knees. "Send it," I whispered. Nora didn't ask again. She pressed the button. The message went to Daniel from Nora's phone. Not from mine. We were careful. It included the videos, the dates, the explanation, and my words. Simple, clear, honest. "Daniel, this is your mother." I was scared. I am still scared, but I cannot stay silent anymore. "Please come home." When it was done, my chest felt tight. Not with fear, with waiting. We didn't celebrate. We didn't talk. Nora put the phone away. She stood beside me. Whatever happened next was no longer only in my control. Melissa returned that evening like nothing had changed. She laughed. She talked about her day. She held out her hand. "Give it," she said. I placed the money in her palm. My hands didn't shake. She noticed. She narrowed her eyes. "Don't look at me like that," she snapped. I looked away. Silence still protected me. Just a little longer. That night, Daniel didn't call. The absence felt heavy. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every sound startled me. Every thought circled back to one question. Will he believe me? The next morning, Melissa was in a rush again. She dressed carefully. Her phone buzzed. She smiled at the screen. "Big plans today," she said. She didn't notice me watching. At the station, my legs shook more than usual. The waiting hurt more than the standing. Nora stayed close. "If you need to sit," she said, "sit." I nodded. But I stayed standing. I had done this for months. One more morning would not break me. Hours passed. The trains came and went. My body ached. My mind raced. Then something changed. A familiar car pulled into the parking area. Not Melissa's. My breath caught. I recognized it before I recognized him. Daniel stepped out. He looked tired. Confused. Angry. My heart stopped. I didn't move. I couldn't. Before I could reach him, Melissa's car appeared. She stepped out smiling. She froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she asked sharply. Daniel didn't answer her. His eyes scanned the station. They found me, standing there, holding the cloth bag, begging. The moment stretched painfully. He looked at me.
At my clothes.
At my posture. At my face. "Mom," he whispered. His voice broke. Melissa laughed nervously. "She just comes here sometimes," she said quickly. "She likes the air." Daniel turned slowly. "What?" he asked. Melissa kept smiling. "She goes to a neighbor's house too," she added. "She's fine." Daniel didn't respond. He walked toward me. Each step felt unreal. When he reached me, he didn't speak. He just took my hands. They were cold. "Why?" he asked quietly. I couldn't answer. The words were too heavy. Melissa rushed forward. "She's confused," she said. "She doesn't know what she's doing." Daniel looked at her. Really looked. Something in his eyes changed. He helped me into the car. Melissa protested. "This is unnecessary," she said. Daniel didn't listen. He drove. Straight home. Silence filled the car. The truth waited. Inside the house, Daniel closed the door. He turned on the television. He connected the phone. He pressed play. Melissa's voice filled the room. Clear, undeniable. Her face drained of color. She tried to speak, to explain, to laugh it off. Daniel raised his hand. "Enough," he said. The room felt still. I sat quietly, my body shaking, my heart racing. The suffering that had defined my days stood exposed. No more silence. No more hiding. Daniel looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said. Those words lifted something heavy from my chest. What happened next would change everything. But for the first time in months, I was not alone. When the video ended, the room stayed silent. Not the soft silence I had learned to live with. This silence was heavy, filled with things that could no longer be denied. Melissa stood still. Her mouth opened once, then closed again. She looked at Daniel, searching for something. Anger, doubt, hesitation. She found none. Daniel turned off the television. He did not shout. He did not pace. His calm frightened her more than any raised voice could have. "Is this true?" he asked. Melissa laughed lightly, a short, forced sound. "You're misunderstanding," she said. "She exaggerates. She's always been emotional." I lowered my eyes. Daniel didn't. He pressed play again. Her voice filled the room once more. Clear, cruel, unfiltered. "This ends now," Daniel said. The words were quiet. Final. Melissa stepped forward. "You can't just—" she began. Daniel raised his hand. "I can," he said. "And I am." He turned to me. "Mom," he said gently, "pack what you need." The sentence felt unreal. For months I had lived out of a bag. Now I was being told to choose. I nodded slowly. Melissa's confidence shattered. She shouted. She blamed. She cried. She accused me of lying. Daniel listened without reacting. Then he said something that felt like air entering my lungs. "You will not speak to my mother like that again." That night, Daniel slept on the couch. I slept in my room. For the first time in months, I slept without fear of the morning. The next day, Daniel did not go to work. He stayed home. He made calls. He asked questions. He listened. I sat nearby, quiet, exhausted. Every time he looked at me, I felt both relief and guilt. Relief that it was over. Guilt that it had taken so long. Melissa tried again. She apologized. She blamed stress. She blamed misunderstanding. She blamed me. Daniel did not respond. By evening, he said the word out loud. Divorce. The word hung in the air. Melissa froze. "You can't do this," she said. Daniel looked at her. "I already have." Over the next days, things moved slowly. Papers. Discussions. Decisions. Daniel took the house keys from her, then the car keys. He changed passwords. He took control back piece by piece. Not with anger, with clarity. Melissa's world shrank quickly. She packed her belongings in silence. Her voice was gone. Her power was gone. When she left the house, she didn't look at me. I didn't look at her either. After she was gone, Daniel sat beside me. "I failed you," he said quietly. I shook my head. "You trusted," I replied. "That's not failure." He held my hand. This time I didn't feel weak. That night, he asked me a question I hadn't expected. "Do you want to come with me to Chicago?" The word with mattered. Not go. Not be sent. With. I felt something loosen in my chest. "Yes," I said. The next days were about leaving. I packed slowly. Not because I had much, because each item carried memory. Daniel handled everything else. Tickets. Arrangements. Details I had been too tired to think about. Before we left, Daniel returned to the railway station with me. He stood beside me where I used to stand alone. "I'm sorry," he said again. I looked at the trains. "I survived," I replied. That mattered too. As we drove away from the station, I watched it disappear behind us. I did not feel victory. I felt release. The house grew quiet again. But this time it felt safe. Melissa did not contact us again. We heard later, through others, that she struggled. No house. No car. No support. Her confidence had not prepared her for consequences. When we boarded the plane to Chicago, my hands shook. Not with fear, with unfamiliar hope. I had lived a long time standing still. Now I was moving. As the plane lifted, I closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe that pain did not get the final word. Chicago did not greet me loudly. It greeted me with space. Wide streets, tall buildings, air that felt different on my face. As Daniel drove us from the airport, I watched the city pass by the window and realized something simple and powerful. No one here knew me as a burden. Daniel's apartment was small but clean. Sunlight came in through the window in the morning. The kitchen smelled like coffee. I sat down slowly, letting my body rest in a place where no one rushed me. "You're safe here," Daniel said. The word safe landed gently. The first few days my body did nothing, and that was enough. I slept when I needed to. I ate when I felt hungry. I took my medicine without fear of being watched. Daniel went to work during the day. Before leaving, he would check on me. "Call me if you need anything," he said every morning. I nodded. For the first time in months, I believed him without fear. Chicago had sounds too, but they were not threatening. Buses passing. People talking. Life happening around me, not at me. I sat by the window and watched. I let my shoulders relax. I let my hands stop shaking. At night, Daniel and I talked. Not about pain at first. About small things. Work. Food. The city. Then slowly, he asked questions. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" he asked one evening. I thought carefully. "I was afraid," I said, "and I didn't want to lose you." He looked down. "I would never leave you," he said. I believed him, but I also understood my fear. Daniel helped me register at a nearby clinic. The doctor listened carefully. She didn't rush. She didn't interrupt. She looked at me and said, "You've been under stress for a long time." I nodded. She adjusted my medicine. She told me to rest. She told me healing would take time. Time no longer felt like an enemy. We created a new routine. Morning light. Simple meals. Short walks when my body allowed. I learned the streets slowly, one block at a time. No one stared. No one judged. I was just another woman walking carefully. Daniel brought home groceries one evening. "You don't have to worry about anything," he said. I smiled softly. "I spent months worrying about everything," I replied. "Now I want to learn how not to." He smiled back. Sometimes memories returned. The railway station. The cold floor. The cloth bag in my hands. My chest tightened. Daniel noticed. "You're here," he reminded me gently. "Yes," I said. "I am." One afternoon, I sat alone in the apartment while Daniel worked. I made tea. I sat at the table. I looked at my hands. They were still old, still tired. But they were mine again. News reached us quietly, through distant connections. Melissa was struggling. No house. No support. She worked cleaning other people's homes. Daniel did not speak about it much. Neither did I. What happened to her no longer controlled my breathing. Chicago slowly became familiar. The corner store, the bus stop, the park bench where I rested sometimes. Each place felt like a small victory. One evening, Daniel asked, "Do you feel trapped here?" I shook my head. "I feel free," I said. Freedom did not feel loud. It felt calm. That night I slept deeply, without fear of keys, without threats, without counting coins, just sleep. I knew healing was not finished. Pain does not disappear just because the danger ends. But for the first time, pain was allowed to soften. As weeks passed, I felt stronger. Not suddenly. Gradually, strength returned the way trust does, slowly, carefully. Chicago had given me something I had forgotten how to receive, a future that did not demand silence. Healing did not announce itself. It arrived quietly, the way morning light slips into a room without asking permission. In Chicago, days did not rush me. They waited, and for the first time in a long while, I learned how to move at my own pace without fear following me. My mornings began with simple things: warm water, medicine taken without pressure, a window opened just enough to let the air in, no keys shaking, no voice ordering me to hurry, just time. Daniel went to work early. Before leaving, he always paused. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. And slowly that answer became true. I began to take small walks on my own. Nothing long, just to the end of the block at first. I counted steps, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel each one. The ground beneath my feet felt steady. No one watched me. No one waited for me to fail. At the clinic, the nurse greeted me by name. "Good morning, Grace," she said. Hearing my name spoken kindly felt new. The doctor listened again. She didn't treat me like a problem. She treated me like a person who had been through too much. "Recovery is not weakness," she told me. "It's work." Work I was finally allowed to do for myself. I started helping in small ways at home, not because I was forced, because I wanted to feel useful on my own terms. I folded laundry slowly. I prepared simple meals. I watered a small plant Daniel placed near the window. The plant grew. So did I. Sometimes memories returned without warning. The station, the cold bench, the sound of trains. My chest tightened. I closed my eyes. I reminded myself where I was. I reminded myself I was safe. The memories did not control me anymore. They passed. One afternoon, Daniel sat across from me at the table. "I found a community center nearby," he said. "They have classes, support groups. You don't have to go." I thought about it. Not with fear, with curiosity. "I might," I said. That surprised both of us. The first time I went, I sat near the door, just in case. People talked quietly. Some laughed. Some listened. No one demanded my story. That mattered. I learned that dignity is not loud. It does not shout. It settles into your posture. It returns to your voice. I stood straighter without trying. I spoke without apology. Daniel noticed. "You look lighter," he said one evening. "I feel real again," I replied. News about Melissa came again. She was working as a cleaner, moving from house to house, depending on what people allowed her to earn. The power she once used had nowhere to sit now. I did not feel joy about it. I felt distance. Distance is a kind of peace. One morning, as I walked alone to the corner store, a woman smiled at me. "Nice day," she said. "Yes," I answered, and for once that was enough. At night, I slept deeply. Not from exhaustion, from safety. I dreamed less about fear and more about ordinary things. Cooking, walking, sitting in the sun. Ordinary felt precious. I began to understand something important. Freedom is not revenge. Freedom is choice. The choice to rest. The choice to speak. The choice to exist without permission. Daniel and I talked openly now. About boundaries. About trust. About mistakes. "We both learned," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And we're still learning." Chicago no longer felt like a place I was visiting. It felt like a place that had room for me, room to heal, room to age without fear, room to breathe. I stood by the window one evening, watching the city lights turn on. For the first time in years, my future did not scare me. It waited. Wisdom does not arrive as advice. It arrives as quiet understanding, after pain has finished speaking. In Chicago, my days continued gently. Not perfect, not dramatic, just honest. And honesty, I learned, is the softest form of strength. I used to think endurance was the highest virtue, that if you stayed silent long enough, pain would eventually respect you. It doesn't. Pain respects boundaries, and boundaries are not walls. They are doors you choose when to open and when to close. When I think back to the railway station, I do not feel shame anymore. I feel clarity. I understand now that survival sometimes looks like obedience until the body says no more. There is no dishonor in lasting long enough to choose life. I also learned that trust must be paired with visibility. Love without attention becomes vulnerability, and vulnerability without voice becomes danger. Silence can be kind, but silence can also erase you. Knowing the difference is wisdom. People often think dignity returns loudly. It doesn't. It returns in small moments, choosing when to sit, choosing when to speak, choosing when to rest without apology. Dignity is not something others give back. It is something you stop giving away. I do not carry bitterness for what happened. Bitterness keeps the past alive longer than it deserves. I carry understanding that power without accountability always reveals itself. And truth, when allowed to exist long enough, becomes undeniable. I also learned something important about help. Help does not always come from those closest to you. Sometimes it comes from the one who notices, the one who listens without asking for proof first, the one who says, "You don't deserve this." Those words can save a life. If I could speak to the woman I once was, the one standing quietly, counting coins, I would not tell her to be braver. I would tell her this: your fear makes sense. Your silence kept you alive. But you are allowed to change your mind. Age does not make us invisible. It makes our time valuable. Every morning we wake up is evidence that our presence still matters. And anyone who treats that presence as disposable has already told you who they are. Believe them. Today, my life is not about proving anything. It is about protecting what is left with care. My peace, my health, my voice. I choose calm over chaos. I choose truth over convenience. I choose myself without guilt. If there is one thing I leave behind, let it be this: you are never too old to choose dignity. You are never too weak to tell the truth. And you are never wrong for wanting a life where you are safe. I do not need revenge. I have freedom. And freedom, lived quietly and fully, is enough.